Welcome back to another episode of Bleav in the Broncos on the Bleav Network. I'm Patrick Chiotti. That is Bri Maestas. Bri, the NFL draft happened last week. The Denver Broncos made 7 selections in the NFL draft. 7 new players, 7 new faces, 7 new personalities coming to the Denver Broncos. Quick thoughts, reactions from the draft, and how are you, my friend?
No, I love that you just like slid that in there as though
Yeah.
I was ready for it. But I am. I'm doing great. The draft flew by, the quickest 3 days you'll ever imagine. But yeah, I'm doing good. We're like approaching summer. It might rain for a week here in Colorado, but that's okay. We got good horizons coming up.
I mean, 300 and some days of sunshine a year. I wouldn't complain about it. The Denver Broncos, Bri, the first round of the NFL draft. Some shockers, some not so shockers. But I think one of the big shockers was the Denver Broncos at 20, taking Jahdae Barron, the defensive back from Texas. A lot of people thought, ourselves included, thought maybe a trade back, maybe a running back. Omarion Hampton was still on the board. So a lot of people, I think, were hoping and praying that he went to the Denver Broncos, but he didn't. The Broncos get a fun piece to add to this defense, a high character individual, high IQ football player. I was pretty excited about the pick, but what were you feeling initially when you heard Jahdae Barron's name called as the 20th overall pick in this year's draft?
Well, I think Mario had just gotten off the phone with you at the
He did.
LTB
Sure
draft
did.
watch party, right? So I was like, oh my God, Mario, do you still have Pat on the line? Because I don't know if you remember this, but I had made it was an off the cuff comment of what
Yep.
if they just went defense? What if they went secondary? What
Yeah.
if they went cornerback? Because that would just be where they're at in a position as the Denver Broncos presently stand is they had the flexibility to make this pick.
Mm-hmm.
When they picked Patrick Surtain at 9th overall, they had less of a leash when that happened, right?
Yeah.
So I felt like it could have been defense. Now, would I would have wagered strong money on it? Probably not, but they got a home run here. You just touched on all the tangibles. A super stand up individual. And now you've got an absolute lights out defense. And I know there was other positions of needs. We've been talking about tight end and running back for God knows how long. But when a player of that caliber falls to you, you don't have the option to pass that up. You take him. And I think that Jahdae fits the defense nicely. I think the versatility is the theme of the evening and the 3-day weekend for Sean
Yep.
Payton,
Yep.
because Barron's going to be able to play multiple spots, and he's going to take away any of those weak and pain points that were in the secondary. It's hard to imagine, but they were there, right? And they were
Yeah.
felt at really inopportunistic times where if you know an opposing team is going to avoid Patrick Surtain with everything that they can, Barron allows them to really sweat it out some more, right?
Yeah.
I could see him being a turnover machine just due to his skills in his anticipation. He's got a
Mm-hmm.
lot of ferocity. He causes turnovers. He gets those interceptions, and I think Vance Joseph is just going to find the way to maximize them all over the field. And you combine them with Riley Moss and Jaquan McMillan. This secondary was already really good, right? And
Yeah.
now they're just a whole lot scarier. And that just is an emphasis on what this Denver Broncos team was able to do. You get your franchise quarterback, you take care of what was plaguing this team the most.
Mm-hmm.
And now you're making your defense better, which I don't know if people were upset with this pick because it wasn't an offensive weapon. But the idea is that if your defense is that damn good, you're not putting all of that weight on Bo Nix's second year to carry everything around and make sure that time of possession doesn't play into losing close games. Like, that is the breadth in which the NFL operates, is that the smallest amount in your 3 phases of football can dramatically affect your ability to win the game. That's how it works. So
Yep.
I love the pick. I was shocked. I was just like, there's no way Oh wow, how is that going to go over? But ultimately, super exciting for this organization. We got another good one,
Yep.
and I don't really see a downside to it.
No, and I think, Sean Payton kind of touched on it after, in his press conference on day one. And, I saw the pick happen and I was like, okay, like this was a guy that a lot of people were mocking to Miami. And when Miami went with Kenneth Grant, I was kind of like, okay, like don't know what the plan is there. But that's fine. And then kept dropping, and we get to 20, and I'm like, well, Barron's still on the board. Like, that's BPA right now. Yeah, like Hampton would be fun, and all the talk about running back or tight end or whatever. I'm fine with that because now you get the chess piece that you needed for the defense. We spent so long, Bri, talking about the offensive joker, but all the whole time they were looking for a defensive joker, right? And now, what does this mean? This means that you spoke to it, the versatility, right? You can put him outside, you can play him inside. He played in the box, he played deep safety, he played all over the field. He lined up, did 12 snaps last year as an edge guy, right? So this is a guy that you can play all over the field. Allowed a 34.2 passer rating when thrown to last year on 68 targets. He does not give up a lot. I lump interceptions and PBUs into one number, and I call it havoc, like a havoc stat, right? 14. He had 9 PBUs and 5 interceptions last season. This guy creates havoc on the defense, and he was the exact piece that the Broncos needed. Jaquan McMillan last year, for all the fun and all the excitement that they had, he was still a liability.
Mm-hmm.
Don't get it twisted. He was still very much a liability. Over 400 yards after the catch last year. Not just giving up, but after the catch. That's a big area of concern. So what you're going to get in Jahdae Barron is you're going to get a player that you can essentially put in that spot who is not going to give up those big plays, who has the IQ and the wherewithal to play the run, to play the screen game. The NFL is getting so into these swing screens and smoke screens and everything going to the outside. This is the perfect guy to have in this spot where you can just put a group of Moss, Surtain, Barron, Hufanga, Jones out there. That's a deadly group right there. And this guy can tackle. He is a very sound technical tackler. I love his game. I think this was a great pick by Denver. I don't think it was a panic pick like a lot of people in the media might say. But
That's ridiculous. I'm sorry.
It is ridiculous.
That is ridiculous because you're telling me that is the only justification for this. Okay. Patrick Mahomes hated the inevitability of playing Justin Simmons twice a season because that was his kryptonite, right?
Yeah.
I know a lot of Broncos country may be upset that they have to see Omarion Hampton on the Chargers, Ashton Genty on the Raiders, 2 times a year, and feeling that FOMO when it comes to that. But you know what I would rather have? I'd rather have that defensive havoc of just disrupting what's going to be a powerhouse AFC West, which is continuously building towards that, and take it away on defense. Because if you're not allowing that offense to get a spark, you're already winning in that chess game. Back to your part, that's ridiculous.
It is, and it reminds me a lot of the Patrick Surtain draft, where it was quarterback, had to be Justin Fields. It can't go any other direction. Has to be that guy, right? And they pick Pat, and everybody freaks out. Oh no, what are they doing? They're getting blue chip players on defense. That's what they're doing. In cost controlled areas. That's what they're doing. You have 2 corners now that you can move inside, outside, whatever, under control for the next 5 seasons. Moss is going to be up in 2 years. But that's fine. But then you have Barron. If you want to move on from Moss down the road, you've got his replacement already. So you're just adding more talent to the defense. That was very good, but let's not kid ourselves. This defense struggled at the end of the season. They struggled bad. And it's okay to want to make that better. They made it a priority in free agency. They sign a linebacker. They sign a safety. They bring DJ Jones back. Those are priority signings. And then you go and draft a guy who's also going to make this defense better. The number one thing that can help a quarterback, is not just a running back. It's not just a star wide receiver. It's not just a franchise left tackle. It's a good defense. Peyton Manning doesn't win that Super Bowl without that defense at all. Brock Osweiler doesn't have nearly the success that he had in 2014, 2015 without that defense. So let's pump the brakes. Let's enjoy this pick. He's a high quality, high character guy. I loved the pick. I think it was outstanding. Bri, the second round pick for the Broncos. They trade back a couple times. We do know that they were targeting tight end in this draft. After Colson Loveland went, which they allegedly were trying to trade up to 10 to take him. Would have loved that. Mason Taylor goes, couple, Terrence Ferguson's still on the board, but they miss on tight end where they wanted one. They trade back a couple times. They draft RJ Harvey, the running back from UCF, with the 60th overall pick after trading back. A lot of people think that's a reach. Sean Payton doesn't. What do you think is going to make RJ Harvey so special in the Broncos offense this season?
I just want to walk through the idea of what a reach is, where it constitutes, right? Because what we hear in the most reflections, like immediate reactions, is positional value, draft capital, what it took to get there. And at the end of the day, I'm not someone who wants to put that completely out of sight, out of mind. I don't want to sweep it under a rug and say it doesn't matter. But we won't be able to tell those things, right, without a whole lot of retrospect and a lot of hindsight and a lot of where did this player go and what variables led to either their success or them maybe possibly flaming out. So I trust and I take everything with a little grain of salt. With Sean Payton specifically coming out and saying that it wasn't a reach, again, there was an inevitability of how draft boards fall and how your individual organizations rankings of those individuals. Like it's like this big orchestra of all the different things happening at the same time, that to say that it was a reach, if RJ Harvey is exactly who Sean Payton was envisioning, ranked at that position in which the board fell, then I'm going to believe that. I'm not worried about that. I circumstantially he wasn't on the radar. I think a lot of other names were definitely where my mind was at with the running back situation, but that's because there's multiple pieces missing from the ground game for the Denver Broncos. It's not one particular player getting slotted in as this bell cow back. I think that you really are looking at RJ Harvey teaming up with Audric Estime and then having some individual who will probably rise during training camp take on that third spot. So I'm not necessarily worried about it. I love the idea that it could have been fun to have Hampton. Yeah. I know a lot of Broncos country wanted to see Genty continue to be a Bronco. Like, those are great stories and great narratives and all those other things. Those are great talents. I'm not rebuking that, but I'm saying RJ Harvey and the tier in which of separation exists in where he was taken and where other running backs were taken and their skill levels really isn't that far off the mark. You might have enjoyed watching his play less than a different individual you were focused on, but unless you're watching every single game from UCF, I'm going to challenge whether or not you can really tell he's not going to be a fit here, opposed to what Sean Payton and George Payton are thinking when they take a RJ Harvey. So I ultimately like what UCF does as a whole. As a program, they very much so bring a level of you're not quite sure what they're going to run when they run it, which the Broncos offense has been somewhat of a tell these last couple of seasons. So to me, we're already a step ahead You allow Bo Nix to not have to shunt or brunt the majority of the run game, and you're already ahead of where you were last season. So how could you not constitute this as a win? So I
Right.
won't go on like too crazy about it, but there's an air of confidence when your team gets to maneuver as though they did in this draft, right? They took on a little bit of like the Patriot way, and they decided to continuously trade back, and it wasn't that far. Like if you take where they initially were, it's not that much of a movement. I know that we probably would have liked a little bit more out of that, but I liked their strategy. I liked their patience, and I honestly wanted to see if they'd go further, but they didn't. They got their guy, and I think it's just going to be better than what we had. Now, again, it could all flame out. It could not be the answer to the run game, because I think a lot stylistically comes from how and when you run your pieces and not necessarily your pieces. So that's where I've been at with all of this. You can't tell me Javonte Williams fell entirely off the face of the earth. I think that there's a little bit more to it than an injury-laden individual who just didn't work out.
Yeah, and we've talked about it a couple times. When you look at the style of backs that Denver has had in the last couple of seasons, Javonte Williams, Samaje Perine, Javonte Williams, Audric Estime, big, bruising backs. You want to get those guys downhill. You don't want them dancing at the line of scrimmage. You don't want them having to need to figure out which hole they're going to bounce to. Just get them going downhill with the head of steam. And last season, when we saw Javonte Williams at his best, and when we saw Audric Estime at his best, it was downhill running. Duo concepts were great for them. The gap scheme stuff that Sean was running with Audric Estime, especially against the Chargers, that opening series, after I was pounding the table saying, run more gap, run more gap, run more gap. They run more gap, and it's successful. That's your personnel. The Audric Estime is not a zone back, but Sean Payton has been wanting to run more zone as of late. So what does he do? He goes and gets a running back who is a complement to Audric Estime, who ran primarily zone. 148 zone plays to 74 gap plays. And in those plays, Bri, RJ Harvey had 54 runs for 10 or more yards, which was second in college football behind who? Ashton Jeanty. Designed runs of 15 or more yards. 32. Behind who? Ashton Jeanty. They're both very similar in size. They're both very similar in build. They're just, little hamster guys. But the contact balance is there. His vision, patience is fantastic. Maybe one of his scouting notes was maybe a little bit too patient sometimes. But that's something that you can work with. And I have seen all of the comments about, well, he's 24 years old and yada, yada, yada. Dude, look, I'm going through right now. I'm doing this big data dive of running backs taken in the NFL draft from 2010 that are between the ages of 20 to 22 and 23 and 25. And so far, just from the 2010 class that I found, the older running backs had more success in the NFL. I wonder why. I wonder why that is. Maybe more reps equals more knowledge. Maybe more reps equals, more time seeing certain defenses or coverages, things like that. Experience matters. And so right now they're getting a back who has 4.4 speed. He's got all the intangibles that they want. He was a team captain. Yeah, he still needs some work in pass pro. Yeah, he still needs some work as a receiver, but that's okay. You can work on those things. The run game is what needed the boost, and they got a boost in RJ Harvey. He was 7th in college football in yards after contact per attempt. And he had a higher yards per carry, yards per attempt than Omarion Hampton did. So for all the complaining, for all the bitching and moaning, be happy. We have a running back who's a good complement, and Sean Payton is going to figure out how to use him.
I think that's been the motif, especially through the media rounds of this draft, right, Pat? Like
Yeah.
it's not a surprise. Like I'm not acting like this is happening within a vacuum. It happens every year, every draft. There's always, you can't get every single player that you've been consistently watching and being a part of. And Patrick has bailed on me, which is fine. But I don't think that you can just continuously complain about the picks that were made if it leads to ultimately more wins, right? We don't know until the product is out on the field and the season has concluded. So there was a lot of, I guess, carrying on about RJ Harvey not being really the sexy pick there, but also it kind of bled into the Pat Bryant pick, which again, I know what it feels like to have these like draft crushes and like, wow, my mocks didn't work out the wrong way, or wow, the Broncos really gave up positional value that way. But like, I don't like to tell people how to fan, but I'm sitting here being like, that is a really weird hill to die on, simply because on a sheet of paper within your scouting reports from, trickling through film, and I'm not saying people don't dig in, I'm saying you have blinders on when it comes to what you think is best and how you think things are going to work out. There's so many other variables to this puzzle piece, and the puzzle itself is just draft prospecting, right? Like, let's go into the entire world of how actual NFL careers play out. It's not for long for a reason. These guys are lucky if they get 3 years in and they make it anywhere, and we're acting like you're supposed to be able to predict that variability from the get-go. But it took me a while to understand the Pat Bryant pick in general, because sure, were there other wide receivers available, but he's a 6'2", 204 pounder that, Lil Jordan Humphrey's out, Evan Ingram is in. And why am I talking about tight ends? Because there's a lot of skill set that needs to be taken over there. There needs the big body. There needs the ability to kind of move yourself around. And then everyone says, well, that means Cortland Sutton's out, or that means Troy Franklin's not going to see a lot of this. But the whole thing with Bryant is he has the ability to really separate, maybe not in his deep threat ability right now, because he can muster that strength. He can win at the catch point, but that route running ability that we've been really hungry for in Broncos country, this is where it's going to start playing out. You're going to get those coveted yards after the catch. And I think it's a great addition ultimately for what Bo Nix needs in order to be successful, because all of it doesn't matter unless it's helping Bo Nix specifically be successful as a quarterback for the Denver Broncos. And I think sometimes maybe that gets a little bit lost on individuals, right? Because we're like, okay, that combination and that chemistry that you're feeling with Troy Franklin isn't quite there yet. This draft, ladies and gentlemen, was about building depth and versatility. It wasn't about being like, here's the number one person you could plug into that system and guarantee success, because I don't care how good the prospect is. You can't fundamentally do that. You don't know how it's going to play out. You don't know if the limited chemistry is going to do that. You don't know if an injury is going to rear its head. So I know I'm venting at this point, but I don't necessarily see something that shies me away from this pick. I saw people literally cringing at the idea that it was Pat Bryant. I don't understand that, right? Because he's shown significant and rapid improvement in his last 3 seasons. So let's just take the idea that there's actually getting better and that the ceiling is there, right? And he reads defenses. Ladies and gentlemen, what are you mad about? Like, where's the disconnect?
It's so funny to hear they got a receiver who just doesn't have downfield long speed. Do they need that? No. If that's what you want, Marvin Mims, Troy Franklin, there you go. There's your long speed.
How often are you using burners?
Guys.
Like,
exactly.
How often?
What they needed, and I feel so vindicated, Bri, because it's almost like Sean Payton is just like, we're connected mind-wise. They needed somebody who can win at the line of scrimmage, who could separate and help them in the quick game. Sean Payton compared Pat Bryant to Michael Thomas. Very, very lofty expectations there. But when you watch his film, you kind of see the vision. This guy is physical. He can block. He loves the game of football. You can tell because he's not afraid to slant in and knock somebody on their ass and just go about his business. Loves to throw hands. We love to see that, right? In the right way. This guy can block. He can win at the line of scrimmage. Great release package. No, he's not a burner. He's not gonna win on the deep stuff. But you know what he is going to win at? Coming back to the football. Working down. As a receiver, it drives me insane to see other receivers just get to the top of their route, break down, and sit there with their hands out. No, work back to the ball. He is fantastic at that. This guy was 10th in all of college football in passer rating when thrown to. He is a reliable receiver. 140.8 was the passer rating when thrown to him. That's pretty crazy. That's pretty nuts. Also a team captain. Also a guy who will finish games. How many game-winning touchdowns did he have last year? And like, to your point, you said how many people are watching UCF games? How many people were watching Illinois games? That quarterback was god-awful. If he gets a good quarterback, and a semi-decent quarterback, he could be a difference maker. And I think that was my question for this show was, is he the answer for Sean Payton? I think he is. I think he is the answer for this receiver room. This is what they were missing. He's going to fill in. This is why they brought in Josh Reynolds last year. Nobody was complaining when they brought in Josh Reynolds. Oh, Josh Reynolds doesn't have the long speed. Josh Reynolds no, but he's a first down machine. He's a red zone threat. Those are all things that Pat Bryant can do, and I think it's going to be fantastic. And we're going to look back at this. All the teams or all the analysts that said, "Oh, geez, this is a reach. I don't know what they're doing here. Why are they picking this guy? I had him as wide receiver 78, blah, 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 blah." Other teams were looking at this guy. Other teams were looking at RJ Harvey too. And so it just goes to show that in your scouting process, like you, as a fan, you have to remember you're just a fan. These teams are seeing the other things that you're not seeing. I remember watching some early Pat Bryant stuff from earlier in the year and going, man, this kid could play. He'd be a lot of fun. But God, he needs a quarterback. This guy is fantastic at coming back to the ball, fantastic run blocker. He's going to be great on screens. I think that it's going to be a perfect fit for this Broncos offense. So
really excited by it because, Pat, I don't know the stat on this because it makes me sad. So off the top of my head, I think I blacked it out. But I'm done with 3 and outs being the repeating cycle of inefficiency. And I think all of these picks are lending to getting away from that. And that's what the game of football is. Like, I think at the end of the day, people envision scoring more than the other team, obviously, but you have a really hard time doing that when you're constantly dishing the ball out at midfield. So
no, agreed. Bri, the Broncos made a couple of picks in the late 3rd and 4th round that had some people scratching their heads. Sai'vion Jones, defensive end from LSU, and Quay Robinson. He's officially listed as a linebacker. We have him as an edge from Alabama. Sai'vion Jones, described as a tweener, outside pass rusher. It's going to be interesting to see what his role is going to be with the Broncos. Real quick, what do you think? What do you think his role is going to be, especially in his rookie season?
Well, and I don't know if people are hoping that he has year 1 impact. I think a lot of the moves are on the defense is outside of the 1st round pick, right? It's going to be a lot of depth building, right? Yeah. You have individuals who are not long for the Denver Broncos organization. They will price themselves out of the market. And that's just the handicap you're put into when you perform as well as you do, right? There's a definite downturn to that. And it's going to be individuals like Zach Allen and Jonathan Franklin Myers just requiring so much more money than we're able to logically give them, right? Walmart cashes something, but the cap space still exists. So I don't, for now, yeah, allegedly. But I see these two individuals as an opportunity to test what your depth looks like. And so whether it be on special teams as well, like we oftentimes think that a special teams pick would just be unheard of, right? That's what you do with your leftovers. What if I told you that Darren Rizzi coming in really changes the idea of what you want to do with your special teams, where you're not taking from your secondary and you're not taking from your defense and plugging those individuals into special teams, you're really kind of cultivating that development. So I think if I look at it like that, they're entirely smart picks, but it also makes me think, the edge room was looking good, right? If you're listing Robinson as a true linebacker, like who's going to be who's going to be out in the long run? Will it be this season? Most likely no. But when it comes time to pay them, I don't know if Denver's going to be able to afford their current edge room, because it wasn't a concern when it came to play. It was a concern as to how long you could feasibly retain that. If they are to win, if they're going to deep into the playoffs and they ultimately win something, the amount of turnover that comes from success is something they're planning for right now, which tells me they're just getting confident. They're not cocky. They know what they're doing with these picks. I guess I don't love them for day one starter capacity, but that's not what we're looking for here. We were looking for true size NFL competitiveness with Sai'vion Jones. Like, you're looking at a really big dude who already looks like a grown man. I love that. Like, I'm not worried about either choice, but I guess I'm just wondering, it makes me concerned for who on the present roster is going to be the turnover.
Yeah. Drew Sanders, count your days. Okay. He's going to have to, like, in all seriousness, he's going to have to prove whether or not he can play and whether or not he has a spot on this roster. Thank you. I think that with Robinson's athletic profile, kind of similar to Drew Sanders in a way, where, Sanders was an edge rusher at Alabama before going to Arkansas. But he just has not found his footing, injuries aside and all that. And what does Quay Robinson bring you? Well, Quay Robinson brings you a seasoned special teamer. Like, you're not going to have to teach this guy a lot. As far as special teams goes. So that's a guy that you can just plug in there right away. And then that's where you just let the development happen. Oh, he's good on special teams. Now, we need somebody to fill in on, blitzing downs. Hey, let's get Quay a shot. Situational pass rushing downs. Let's give Quay a shot. Let's see what he can bring. We know he's going to be a good special teamer. Let's see what he can do. Same thing goes for Jones, right? It's like, if they're looking for a guy, I need to go back over his run film. I've heard from a lot of people that the run defense isn't that great, but if he can set an edge as like a tweener guy, that's big, because Benito struggled to set an edge last year. He got ran at quite a bit. So I think there's going to be ways where they can incorporate these guys into certain, filling certain roles in certain situations.
Like, if you're getting bodied by a tackle.
Like if you're playing a team that loves to run outside and they just got big maulers outside, get a guy that can set an edge. Dondre Tillman was one of those guys, and they used him quite a bit, but like, you still need to find a place. So Quay Robinson, I think, is going to find his value on special teams. Honestly, it would be good for Jones to figure out his special teams role early and just focus on putting on weight. He talked about having to add more to his pass rush game, which I love that. I love that he knows what he needs to work on. He's coming into the league knowing what he needs to work on. But I think they got two decent developmental picks here. I think that, not home runs by any means, but good developmental guys. And that's where you're picking. Like, you're not going to find your star edge rusher in round 3. That doesn't happen. These are guys
and you're seeing effort from that. That's what's helping make that decision. It's like, what makes them a good football player at that point.
Need them. Bri, on the topic of special teams,
Oh,
Broncos did. If you remember, we had Joe DeLeon on this show,
yeah.
and we asked him about this very individual, and he said, "Don't draft specialists." And the Broncos heard Joe say that and said, "We're going to do that. We're going to do just that." Jeremy Crawshaw is the 6th round pick by the Denver Broncos. The first punter, Bri, the first punter drafted by Sean Payton since Thomas Morstead.
It's changing the times.
It is. Crawshaw, to me, you know, I looked at the cut up that Frankie Films posted, and the one thing that I really loved was his leg control. He's got experience with directional punting, which is what Rizzy wants out of his punters. So this is a good opportunity for them to see what they have. Big dude, Australian punter, has a background in rugby, which is fantastic. Draft punters who have that experience. Michael Dixon from Seattle is another guy who has a similar background, and the spin of the balls that come off of his foot, my goodness. So I'm excited to see a punter battle. I don't think Matt Hack is going to win this. I think it's going to be Crawshaw. Just go with the younger guy and see what he can do. But then, Bri, they took Caleb Lohner in the 7th round. I was shocked. I was flabbergasted. I was confused. Who is Caleb Lohner? Bri, fill me in. Who is this guy?
I think the pick shocked a lot of people simply because it was a who. It almost felt, and if you were taking it just in the context of this feels like a prank, we're asking for a tight end, and this is what you're delivering, right? But if you think about it in a vacuum of whatever was seen, whatever internal knowledge was available to the Denver Broncos in order to say this is a experiment worth taking on, simply given the stature and the makeup of this individual, then I think it gets a lot more interesting, right? Would it have felt different if they had 9 or 10 picks, right? If they were in the realm of like the Rams and the Ravens and they just had all this fun stuff to play with, maybe it would have been less shocking. But I don't necessarily think it's a bad pick. I think that is somebody who was highly researched by the Broncos, who they felt they really wanted to get their hands on, and ultimately wouldn't have had the chance to snag them up in the undrafted free agency period. So they had to make a move on Caleb Lohner. Now, am I concerned that he's only got a year under his belt of football in his adult life? Maybe, but it could be cool if it works out.
It was like 36 snaps since 7th grade, something like that. That's crazy. And then you get drafted in the NFL. Anything is possible. Anything is possible. I think what Sean Payton sees in this pick is the upside of you have a guy who's a former basketball player. He's got the size of a former basketball player. You know, there's a lot of things that go into that too with being a tight end, because it's like you understand how to use your body for leverage, especially when like blocking out, boxing people out for rebounds. That's something you can use in the red zone, right? You think about traits that can translate from the person to the practice to the game. I think that's something that can translate really well. Obviously, jump ball capabilities, but like, don't know how he's going to deal with contact. We don't know what he's going to be like. Like, he caught 4 passes last year and all of them were touchdowns. So it's like, that doesn't give me
Something's
a whole
working.
lot. Something's working. Maybe it's the fact that he's 6'7". Like, God, must be nice.
That's what we need. Okay, Pat, I'm sorry, but the more we go into that, I know I'm like a shiny objects thing when it comes to just physical specimens, but the idea is that, I don't know, if you slimmed up Mike McGlinchey, he's built like a tight end. You'd actually run circles around people. You'd have Gronk 2.0 on your hands if he wasn't playing a friggin' tackle. So I
see how he
don't
blocks.
hate it. But
I don't hate it.
we've had so many failed experiments that I'm just a little bit shifty when it comes to like, is this going to work out? Not if you think he's going to be a day one killer instinct tight end and he's going to turn into Travis Kelce. But if you think that he could play into the versatility of what Sean Payton is going to be asking of this offense moving forward, it could be really exciting. Something weird could happen.
Lucas Kroll, count your days. You're
over. It's so over.
It's so over. I think there's like, obviously everybody was making Jimmy Graham, references, and it's like, dude, Jimmy Graham was taken in the second round. Like,
I think
he's a big dude. But I see the vision, and why not? Like, it's a 7th round pick, is the 241st pick. Give me a break. And there's also special teams value there. A guy like that who can jump, hey, put him on field goal, put him on field goal unit, and just tell him, put your hands up. Just jump up and put your hands up. I think there's value there. Is he going to make the final roster? That's a long shot, but there's an opportunity there. He's going to get a chance to compete. Overall, Bri, I think this draft class was great for building depth. I think they filled quite a few needs, especially on the offense. And draft value be damned. They did a good job picking talent this year. I think they did a fantastic job. What about you?
Yeah, I think they were in a position to do so. You want your team to be able to make these decisions without absolutely capsizing your boat. And I think they were just in the position where they needed to do that, because it's not often, right? They could very much get into the realm of they're going to spend heavy draft capital trying to secure some other free agents in a much better class or cohort of individuals who are available. So let's just think in the context of the right now. I feel good about the picks, and we'll know later on next year at this very time I could be cursing the sun, but I'm not just.
Yeah. Remember when they picked Devon Bailey last year and everybody was making jokes about how they picked a 40-year-old wide receiver, and then he turned out to be one of Bo's most reliable targets?
I mean, maybe they were saying the same thing about Bo.
Yep.
Saying the same thing.
Very true. Bri, that was fantastic. Thank you so much for another fun year of draft coverage. You can follow Bri and myself on X at Bri Maestas 303. At Patrick Chiotti. Follow at Bleav Network as well. Make sure that you subscribe to the show on whatever podcast platform you're listening to us on. We appreciate you. We love you. Broncos country. Until next time, we're going to talk about UDFAs next time. That's going to be a lot of fun. Broncos country. We love you. Thank you so much for listening. Go Broncos.
Go Broncos.